You've chosen the perfect scope, and now comes the most hands-on part of the process. That is mounting this scope to your rifle. This is where precision and patience pay off. A sloppy mounting job can make even the most expensive optic perform poorly, so let's get it right the first time so we have a great day at the range. Now, before we get into mounting the optic to this rifle, we're going to talk about some of the tools. Now, you don't need to have these exact tools. They do make the job a lot easier, but something to hold the rifle will work out great. So we have the Master Gun Workstation here that does come with a leveling knob on the side that we can get into later. But as you can see, it holds the rifle in a really good level and stationary area for me so I can mount this optic. We're going to be running the Real Avid Level Right Pro that comes with a grid and the bubble level as well as a projector. We got a silver Sharpie. We've got some thread locker if you prefer to use that on your screws. And then we're going to be using the new X3 driver with the Smart-Torq adjustable 15 to 65 torque limiter. Now, before we get started, when we're looking at the base that the rings are going to be mounted to, some actions come with the base on there, some actions do not. And if you look at this action, this base is actually built into it. It's all one piece. So I don't need to remove this. But if I bought an action or if I didn't buy an action, it doesn't matter. I always want to make sure that I will pull the base, or before I put a new base on there, I'm going to use some foul out and degrease the thread pitch that goes into the action, degrease the screws, and then I'm going to put the base on there, use some Loctite on my screws, and torque the base down to the manufacturer specs. All right, so next we're going to attach the bottom halves of our scope rings to the base. Now, one step I like to do before we get into that is I make sure when I get my rings, I do not separate them and put the base over here to the bottom half of the rings over here and the top half of the rings over there and mix them all up. I like to keep them together. A lot of times they machine these to be together. So I'm just going to take my silver Sharpie, and then I'm going to put one line on one, and then I'm going to do two lines on the other. And that way, I always know which base or bottom half of the rings and top half of the rings go with each other. But I also know what side it's supposed to be on, so I never get them mixed up. Okay, so now that we have the silver marker on the bottom halves of our mounts, we're going to go ahead and throw these up here. And I'm going to just set the optic in here, just get an idea of how the optic and the rings kind of set down. There is eye relief that we need to play with. There is some leveling that we need to play with. And honestly, I always like to leave myself, personally, I like to leave myself a little bit of movement to the front off the base or the rear of the base, but we can get into that later if we have to do that. Right now, I'm not very happy with how the rings are set up. So we're going to move the optic, and we're going to move this forward by 2. And we're going to set this back in here. And what I was going for was, I know this gap on the front of my optic isn't that big, so I want to try to make sure this ring is placed in the center or as close to center as possible. As far as the rear, as long as I'm not up against where I can actually do my zoom in and zoom out, at least when I have an 1/8 of an inch here, I'll be happy. So at this point, sometimes what I like to do is I could get behind the rifle here and start working on setting my eye relief. Or, depending on how you like to do this, you could mount the top rings on here, and we're going to put the screws in there very loosely because we don't want to clamp it down yet, because we still need to level the reticle as well as set our eye relief. If you're new to mounting an optic, when we shouldered the rifle, we were looking to move the scope forward or backward until we had a full clear sight picture. Now, we're going to get into tightening the screws down and start to mess with leveling the reticle. Okay, so that is set pretty close for what I'd like to do. And now we're just going to take our caps, we're going to put them on here, and we're going to go ahead and get our screws and start to screw those down so we can start to level out the optic. Okay, so now that I've got a rough eye relief set, I'm not going to be using blue Loctite. The reason that is this, a lot of times some of these optics get taken on and off, and I don't want to strip out the aluminum threads. So everything's been degreased, dry. We're just going to put these in. We're going to torque them down to manufacturer specs after we get it level. But right now, we're just going to get the screws in here, get them snug, so it holds the optic in place, and we can still rotate it right or left for leveling. So now that we have a rough idea of our eye relief, we're going to set the bottom half of these rings to the torque, which is 30 inch-pounds. Last thing to do is little silver Sharpie, so if they move while we're on the clock or at the hunt, we know, and we know that we probably shouldn't take that shot.